Well, hello everybody. Matt at SFREP. Glad you could join us today. Give me just a second here.
Well, hello everybody.
Hopefully,
Matt at SFREP. Glad you could join us today. Give me just a second.
hopefully this all goes smoothly. This is the first time that I've done one of these on YouTube in quite a while. So fingers crossed that all of this goes well. I want to thank everybody for showing up, and we've already got some people who are asking some questions in the chat, so that's awesome. For those of you who are signed in on YouTube, there will be a chat module, I guess, that will be over on the let's see, it'll be on your right, it'll be on the right hand side of your screen. And what you can do is go ahead and type out your questions. I'll be happy to answer them. If you are not signed in on YouTube, then what you can do is simply email me. Just send an email to training@sfrep.com, and I will be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Now, what we're going to be going over in this webinar is it's kind of an introduction to Appraise-It Pro. So it's really geared towards people who are currently using Appraiser Classic and are going to be moving over to Appraise-It Pro. So we're going to go over kind of some of the ins and outs of Appraise-It Pro. We're going to keep it somewhat basic, and we're going to go over some key things that you need to know when you're moving from Classic to Pro to aid you in making that transition. As a matter of fact, there's one key thing that you really need to know, and I'll tell you when we get there. But it's one thing you really need to know that will make your life easier when you're moving over to Classic, from Classic to Pro. And it has to do with the way that you start reports and the way that you build your reports. We kind of made some key changes there. And once you understand that, everything just kind of falls into place, trust me. We already have at least one question here, so let me switch over. Matt, great name. Matt asked, does Spark work with SFREP? Does Spark work with SFREP? It absolutely does. You just need to contact Spark. They did their own integration. So what will happen is you just basically purchase Spark, and it will work perfectly fine with SFREP. They did an integration with us, I think maybe 6 months ago. So it is fully up and running with Appraise-It Pro. Now, it only works with Appraise-It Pro. It doesn't work with Classic as far as I know. So it is fully up and running with Appraise-It Pro. Okay. If you have any other questions, remember training@sfrep.com, or you can use the chat that will be over on the right-hand side, and I'll check that periodically. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at Appraise-It Pro. Let's go ahead. Right, so this is my desktop here. We're going to go ahead and launch it. Now, you won't be able to see the splash screen that comes up on the other monitor over here. Go ahead and launch it. Now, you won't be able to see the splash screen that comes up here in just a second for you. There we go. Now, a couple things you need to know about Appraise-It Pro. First of all, and by the way, if you're having a hard time seeing the screen, make sure that you go full screen on the YouTube video, or at least put it in theater mode. And you can do that by using the little, it looks like little brackets. When you mouse over the video, there'll be some brackets in the lower right-hand corner. You can either click on those, or you can click on the little square when you mouse over it. It says theater mode, and that'll make everything bigger, but you'll still be able to have the chat down below. Okay, so a couple things you need to know about Appraise-It Pro. First of all, there is no extra charge for using Appraise-It Pro. As long as you're on the Appraise-It subscription plan, then you can use Appraise-It Pro at no additional charge. All you'll have to do is contact our sales office, and kind of the best way to do that would be to just give them a call. You can call them at 800-644-4051. You can also use the sales number that I think they often advertise, which is 800-523-0872, but both of these numbers go to the same place. So just call 800-644-4051, select sales, and just ask them, say, hey, I want to go ahead and start using Appraise-It Pro. They'll just add it to your account. And then what they can do is they can either schedule one of our technicians to give you a call, and they'll log into your computer and set everything up for you, or they will give you a download link, and if you are the kind of person that likes to do that kind of stuff yourself, then they will give you the download link, and then you can then you'll be able to, if there was some echo there, I'm not sure there was. But if there was some background noise there, I think I've taken care of it. So there may have been some background noise there. So yeah, I think I took care of it. Okay. So just give them a call at 800-644-4051 and they can get that all taken care of for you. All right. Okay. Let's get back over here. The other thing you should know is that Appraise-It Pro and Appraise-It Classic can coexist on the same computer at the same time. You'll see I have both of them installed here. They're both on the desktop. So all you have to do is just simply install Appraise-It Pro. It will convert everything over from Classic. All your databases and everything will be converted over from Classic. And then you'll have a separate icon on your desktop. And you can start an appraisal in Appraise-It Classic and then move it over to Appraise-It Pro. And you can even do the reverse, which is you can start a appraisal in Appraise-It Pro and then move it back over to Classic. So that certainly helps out a lot. Okay, let's see here. Once again, first time doing this for a while. Yeah, there was an echo, and I apologize for that. That was, once again, I haven't done this in a while, so I took care of that. Hopefully everybody can hear okay now. And it was probably a pretty bad echo too. It basically, the stuff was feeding back into itself, but we got that fixed. Okay. So let's go ahead and we'll go back over here to Appraise-It Pro. So Appraise-It Pro is also, by the way, the only 64-bit software out there on the market. What that means is that 32-bit software like Appraise-It Classic or any of the other software out there can only address about 3 gigabytes of RAM. Appraise-It Pro, however, can leverage all of the RAM that you have in your system. So in this computer I have here, I have 16 gigabytes of RAM. So it's able to utilize that 16 gigabytes to make sure, like if I'm putting lots of large photos into the report, if I'm putting lots of PDFs into the report, it's able to leverage all of that RAM so that it doesn't have to swap out to the hard drive, which can be, can really have an adverse effect on the performance of the program. So when you start up Appraise-It Pro, you're going to be in this area that the developers and Microsoft both call the Backstage. And the Backstage, it's an okay name, I guess. I get what they're going for there. I prefer to kind of call it a super file menu, and you'll kind of see why I mean that. If I click on this little arrow here, it's going to take me back to the main kind of editing screen. Now there's nothing here right now, of course, because I don't have a report open at the moment, but it will take me back to this main editing screen here. And to get back to where I was, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this file menu up here. You can see it's kind of segregated off by itself. It's a different color. So it's kind of inverted. So when I click on that, it takes me back here. So pretty much everything that was in the file menu in Appraise-It Classic is here in this area that they call the Backstage. I kind of call it a super file menu. Now, when you first start the program, you're going to be on the welcome area. And the welcome area is just as long as you're connected to the internet, it'll update itself. This is just where we can communicate and put some stuff with news, promotions, things like that. We're never going to put GIFs and flashy things in there to be really distracting. It's always just going to be text, look nice and clean. But it's a way that we can kind of keep you updated with stuff. You can see the last time this was updated was on August 17th, where they were talking about a required Inspect a Lot update. Inspect a Lot being the mobile app that we have that works. Next is going to be new. This is pretty much the same thing as you had in Appraise-It Classic with the File New menu. And these are all of the different primary forms that you can base a report off of. And so if I wanted to do a 1004, I would just come over here, select the 1004. Right now it's under my frequently used because I use it all the time, but I could also come and find it under UAD as well. When I single click on this, so if I double click on this, it's just going to open up the default template. You may be wondering, what's a template? Think of a template essentially as you can kind of think of it as a skeleton. They kind of have the same function, the same purpose. Now, they are different. Templates are way easier to use, but they kind of serve the same purpose, and we'll kind of go over that a little bit more here in a little while. But if I single click here, I can see all the different templates that I've already set up. And of course, just like a skeleton, you may set up a template for a specific neighborhood, a specific town, a specific lender, whatever the reason for you setting up a template. They're very easy to set up. I'll show you how to do it here in a little while, but this is where you would launch that template. So if I went to the 1004 and I was doing an appraisal in Clyde, then I can double click on this Clyde and it will open it up. Open up that template. And just like a skeleton, a template can have images in it. It can have pre-formatted text. You can change around the way that certain fields operate, display 0, don't display 0, things like that. And if I want, I could just single click on Clyde and then click on create report. What most people will do is just simply double click there, or you could double click on the default template. Now take note, there's a little checkbox down here at the bottom. It says include suggested forms in the default template. And what that means is that when you open up a default template, which you'll probably only use occasionally when you're going to be creating a new template, but the default template is just going to be a blank form, and it's going to have some addenda put in there, some photograph addenda, some mapping addenda, sketching, things like that, things that you would need in order to, kind of getting started and starting out a report with Appraise-It Pro. If you want to search for something, it's real simple. You just come up here, type in 2055, for instance, and it's going to show me all of the 2055s that are available in Appraise-It Pro. And you can see here we have the UAD. It's the same thing's going to show up in multiple places. So I've got it under UAD. I have it under Fannie Mae, a couple of them under Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, non-lender versions, and then, of course, the legacy forms that date back to pre-2005. So some people still use those for doing non-lender work and stuff like that. So that's why that's there. Moving on, and if you want to clear this, you just click on this little X and that'll clear everything out. We'll move on over here to Open. You probably won't use Open all that much, except for the recent reports list right here. If you've been working on a report over the last 2 days, instead of going and searching for it and then opening it up, what you can just do is simply come in here under recent reports, find that particular report, double click on it, and then open it up and start using it. It's just a way for you to see like the last 20 or so reports that you had been working on. You can also open a report from here. Once again, you'll probably use search to do that, but you can open a report if you want to just browse to it. You can also open a classic report. Once again, if you're looking for a classic report, I would recommend going to search, which we'll go over in a minute, because all of your classic reports are going to be indexed along with any new reports that you create in Appraise-It Pro. And then you can open up a MSMO document. Opening a MSMO document can be useful if you are either coming over from another software and you had been archiving your MSMO XML documents when you sent them. You'd been archiving them somewhere. You can go in and go and browse and find one of those and open it up. It's also very useful for sharing information with a colleague or a friend who is using another software. So if you have a friend who's using a la mode, they can export their report in MSMO XML format, send you that MSMO XML file via email, and then you can open it up here. You'll be able to see the entire report. And so that's kind of nice because then you can share data back and forth even though you have different software. And then finally, there's Open Template and Open Classic Skeleton. Open Template you will probably never use, but it does what it says. And then Open Classic Skeleton. Now this you might actually use quite a bit in the beginning. In the early days of testing Appraise-It Pro, we did convert over all of the skeletons, custom skeletons from Appraise-It Classic. What we found out, though, in testing with our beta testers and in using it and everything, was that that's not really what everybody wanted. You think that's what you want, but then you realize that that brings over just everything. So all these old skeletons that are 10 years old, have a bunch of junk in them you don't ever use anymore, all that stuff got brought over and you had to sift through it all. What we decided to do was we made that a manual process. What I encourage you to do is to create new custom templates in Appraise-It Pro from scratch for two reasons. One, you're going to have nice, clean starting points. You're not going to be bringing over any of that junk from Appraise-It Classic. Also, in building a template, you're going to learn how to use Appraise-It Pro very quickly. and you get very familiar with it and very comfortable with it very fast. Now, we do understand, though, that there are going to be some skeletons that are very complex that you guys have in your old software, and you do want to bring that over. So we do allow you to open and browse to a custom skeleton, load it in, and our tech support can help you out with this. Load in the custom skeleton, then you'll want to clean it up, and then you can save it as a template. And dealing with templates, I can't stress enough, so much easier than dealing with skeletons. And they kind of remove the reason for having print schemes. There are no print schemes in Appraise-It Pro, and I'll show you why, because they're not needed. It would be completely redundant to have a print scheme, and I'll show you what I mean by that when we get into editing and building our reports. That's the part that you're really going to want to pay attention to, because when I show you the difference in building a report from Classic to Pro, it should click, and it will make moving over to Appraise-It Pro much, much easier. We'll come down here to search. There is a companion webinar to this webinar called Appraise-It Pro Tips and Tricks. It's kind of a part 2. And in that, I go over how you can customize all this. But for today, just know that this is where you come to search for a report. Just like in Appraise-It Classic, the more of these fields that you fill data into for searching, the more narrow and targeted your search results are going to be. Now, obviously, I don't use this installation of Appraise-It Pro for actual appraising. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a blank search. We'll pretend like I filled some stuff in here. I'm going to do a blank search, and you'll see I have a grand total of 4 reports in my database here. You obviously will have hundreds and thousands of them. But I have 4. So we'll pretend like I actually just did a search and I came up with 4 results. So the results are going to be shown in this box down here. There's 4 of them. And I can scroll out using this scroll bar, see all the different data that is captured about those particular addresses. And then if I find the right one I'm looking for, I can single click on it. If there is a front view photo, it'll be shown over here. And then some pertinent information about that particular address. And if I know that that's the one I'm looking for, I can simply double click, or I can come down here and click on Open Report. If I want to clear everything out of here, just click on the clear button, say yes. That's going to give me a clean slate again. You can also export your results. That's more of something we go over in that part 2 as well. And then finally, settings. If you are a tinkerer, you can come in here to settings and you can play around with these to your heart's content. If you do change something in here, I would recommend that you write it down, maybe on a Post-it note or something like that. That way, if it causes a behavior that you don't like, you know what to come back and change back. If you are somebody that really doesn't feel comfortable monkeying around with stuff, I would only come in here with one of our tech support people on the line with you. And then finally, we have save as template, close, print, save PDF. This stuff here, I don't really go over because it just is duplicating what is already on the home screen up here, and that's where you're going to probably use it anyway. So we'll just skip over that. That's why it's ghosted out right now. I don't have a report currently open. And then finally, there is New Window and Exit. New Window, it's kind of cool. When you click on New Window, it's going to open up a new instance of Appraise-It Pro. So you can have as many instances of Appraise-It Pro with different reports open as you want. That's really handy if you have multiple monitors on your computer. You'll be able to reference back and forth to those other reports, copy and paste between them, things like that. And of course, Exit's pretty self-explanatory. It does the same thing as the X in the upper right corner. All right, so let's come back over here to New, and we're going to open up a blank 1004 report. So I'm just going to double click, and because I have that little checkbox down there checked, it is going to open up a blank appraisal, default skeleton with, it's already going to add in some photograph addenda, some mapping addenda, things like that. I'm just going to check and see if we got any questions. Oh, we do have a couple questions. Christopher asks, does Apex work with Pro? Absolutely. Apex 5, I believe, 5 and above will work with Appraise-It Pro. And you don't have to do anything. As long as you've got Apex and it was working in Classic, it will work just fine in Pro. And really, Pro's been out for about, God, it's probably going on 2 or 3 years now. I think they finished it right as the pandemic was starting was when we finished Pro. So we've had a lot of time to get everyone, all the ducks in a row and everybody in a row. So, they integrate with everybody. So Apex, Spark, Profit.ai, Total Connect. Who else is it? We've got, Spark. We've got Data Master. Everybody integrates with Pro. So no problems there. What about, Matt asks, what about importing other software like from a la mode? So there is a thing, and we'll get back on track here in a second. I just want to knock these questions out. There is a thing called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1996. If you want to go read it, look it up on the internet. Fascinating reading, and I say that with the most snarky face I possibly can make. But what that basically does is it prevents anybody, from breaking encryption that was created by somebody else. Even if you own the rights to that content, we as SFREP cannot go and break the encryption to get the ooey gooey nugget center out of there of all your data. It's the same reason that you cannot rip your own Blu-rays and legally and keep them on. Of course, everybody does it, but you can't legally rip a Blu-ray and then, store it somewhere. Even though you bought that disc and you own it, you can't legally rip what the contents of that Blu-ray because it's encrypted. So you'd be breaking encryption, which is legal. So all of that to say, no, we cannot convert over the reports from a la mode or ACI or Bradford because those are copywritten. Hopefully this is all going to make sense. So basically we would have to break encryption in order to do that. What we recommend doing is if you're moving over from a la mode or some other software, if you've been archiving your XML files, then you can, our tech support can help you in moving all of that data over to a specific location, and then it will get indexed by Appraise-It Pro, and then you can open them up and get most of the data from a given report. Now we also, for new customers, offer a free trial period that aids in this process. In you can have an overlap where you can still access your old software, export out an XML, and then bring it into Appraise-It Pro. So that's what we generally recommend. I want to see if there's anything else. You guys are doing great with these questions. If you got any questions, remember there's chat over on the side, or you can email directly to training@sfrep.com, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Okay, so get back over here. All right, so this is the layout of Appraise-It Pro. You've probably already seen it at this point. We have 4 panels. Actually, there's 5, but we'll go over the hidden one here in a minute. But there's 4 main panels here. You have Report, Validator, Responses, and Format. Now, remember I told you about that hidden one? That is Help, and it is hidden as a tab right here, but we'll go over that here in a minute. The main one that I want to go over with you guys is going to be the Report tab. Now, remember, Report panel. And remember, I told you guys that there was going to be a time when you really want to pay attention, and this is that time. The main difference between Appraise-It Classic and Pro centers around the way and when you build a report. So in Appraise-It Classic, you would fill all your forms out, and then you would build the final report at the end. There's some technical reasons why that was done that way, back when they came up with that interface back in the mid-90s. But those don't apply anymore. It had to do with computer resources and things like that. What we switched Appraise-It Pro to is the industry standard, which is called the container method. And essentially, you build your report when you first start and as you move along. So think of the report panel as the table of contents of this report. It's showing what's contained in the report and in what order. So you set both the order of the report in this panel window and the contents and the content of that particular report. So for instance, if this particular report was not going to be using a flood map, then you just simply select flood map, click on remove, say yes, and it's gone. You don't want anything in this report panel that is not going to be in the final report. And the big reason for that is if you save out of this report and you move on with your life and you're doing some other report and you get a call and they want to question you on it or get an update or something like that, When you come back to this report 2 weeks later, you're not going to remember what was in it. Well, handily, if you come back into this report, you will have both the order in which you sent it to the final client, whoever that may be, lender, AMC, whoever. You will have it in the same order. You'll know the order and you'll know what the contents were. And not only that, you can do handy things like, let's say you have some general photos here. This is the 6 up per page, the 6 photos per page photo addenda here. Let's say you put these were your garage photo. They had a really nice garage, so you put some cool photos in there. What you can do is you can highlight that, click on rename, call this garage photos, and I'm going to do 6x just to know this is a 6 per page. And now, just at a glance, I know that those are the garage photos. I don't have to open up that addenda in order to do that. You can also do that with word processing pages. You can do it with PDF pages. That can be really helpful in organizing your report. Let's say that you, in your reports, like to put the location map at the very, very front of the appraisal. So what I can do is I can click and just simply drag location map up here to the top. And now location map will be the first thing in that appraisal report. Now this mostly applies to the PDF version of the report. And in case you didn't know how all of this works, on the back end, when you send an XML file to the lender or AMC, embedded inside that XML file is the PDF. And that's for the humans to read. The XML is going to be for the computers to process, read, make decisions on, etc. And that is going to even become more of a thing in UAD 2.0 when we have dynamically created forms. So it's going to be good with UAD 2.0 for the end user, meaning the borrower or the lender, or not the borrower or the lender, maybe a lender at the bank, to be able to read it more concisely. But really, for the borrower or for the seller, whoever's getting that appraisal report, they're going to get a much more human-friendly version, and the computer is going to get a much more computer-friendly version. This is really what they should have done with UAD to begin with, but they wanted to shoehorn all this extra data into an existing form, and this is what we got. Okay, so we've shown you how to remove something. We've shown you how to rename something, but how do you add something? Maybe we want to put that flood map back in. So what I can do is I can come up here, click on add, and it will bring up the add remove forms dialog here. And let's say I'm looking for that flood map. Now under frequently used, there's flood map right there. I can go ahead and do it that way, or I can come up here, do a search for flood. There it is. It's under frequently used and under maps. And then I can either double click here and it will dump it. By the way, this is just a temporary reproduction of what's over here. It'll dump it in at the end, or I can just click and drag. So maybe I want to put the flood map after location. I can click and just drag it in here after location, hit save and close, and then there it is. It's added it back in. In the tips and tricks, I will go over how you can actually use this process to change your report from, say, a 2055 to a 1004, or how to easily create a 1004D from an existing report. Some of those kind of things. It's super, super easy in Appraise-It Pro. So the other thing you can do over here is you can actually add multiple copies of certain types of addenda. A good example of that would be comp pages. So you can have an unlimited number of comps in Appraise-It Pro. You can have 30 comps in there if you want. Now remember, whoever you're sending it to, their portal or whatever, may only support a certain number of comps, but we're not limiting you. You can put as many comps in there as you want. So right now I've got comps 1 through 3, of course, in the main body of the report. And then I've got an addenda here for comps 4 through 6. But let's say I wanted to add 7 through 9. Well, what I can do is I can just click on this little plus here. And what that'll do is now it's added comps 7 through 9, and it's also automatically added the photos for comps 7 through 9 as well. And then if I don't need it, I could just remove it. Now you may have noticed when I double clicked on something to look at it, it opens it up in a tabbed interface here. So I usually am always going to have the 1004 open, although I could close it if I wanted to. But every time I open up a new addenda or a new page or a new section, it's going to open up kind of like a web browser in a tabbed interface up here. And these tabs, you can pull them out, you can move them to other monitors, you can move them around if you want, reorder them. Works just like Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge, any kind of web browser you're familiar with. Same concept, works the same way. So any questions on the report profile? That's kind of ending where I really wanted you guys to pay attention. And by the way, yes, Matt, this is being recorded. Although I don't know how apt I'm going to be to put it on the site. I am going to have a recording of it though. If you want a copy of it, I'll send it to you. This being the first one, I'm probably not going to put it up publicly. I'll probably wait until I've got this down a little bit better and then do it. There are some previous versions of this though that are already on our YouTube page, which is simply youtube.com/SFREP. Super easy to remember that. Okay. Next panel is validator. And you can see I can actually adjust the size of these panels here. Validator is really simple. It is going to be doing real-time validation kind of as you go. So the easiest way to see the real-time validation in action is with the state field. If I type in NC here, tab out, it's fine. It doesn't have any problem with that. However, if I were to do BC and tab out, it's going to turn red. BC is a Canadian province. It is not a US state, so it's going to turn red. This also supports territory. So if we put in VI there, it's fine. If we put in GU for Guam, that's fine. But that's just kind of obviously you're not going to make a mistake there unless it's a typo, but that's just to show you how the real-time validation works. So in real time, it's going to be checking things like formatting. It'll do some math checking, some simple stuff. When you get to the end of the report though, you are going to want to hit that validate button. I'm not going to do it now because it'll just freak out because there's nothing filled out. But if you hit the validate button, then what it will do is it will do a comprehensive validation. And it works just like it did in Appraise It Classic. It'll turn the field red. You can double click on the warning. It'll jump you back to that field. Real simple. Up here on the right, this is probably my favorite panel. I really love the way that we implemented common responses. So gone is the F key bar that used to be at the top, although you can still assign things as F keys, as you can see I've done here. Over here in the city, I've actually set up a bunch of these. And so there are a couple ways that I can use these responses. When starting out, most people will just use their mouse to come over here and double click and it'll put Matthews in there. That's probably the most simplistic way to do it. If you have assigned it an F key, then you can use that F key. So I can hit F8 and it'll put Asheville in there for me. I can use F4 and it'll put Charlotte in there for me. My favorite way to do it though, and probably the quickest way to use these responses is with autofill. So if I do C, it's going to put in Cleveland because that comes in alphabetical order. But as soon as I hit H, it knows I mean Charlotte, and then I can tab out of there. So the autofill works just like it would in a web browser. Okay, so that's my favorite way to do it. There's also F2 if you want to choose it from a list. Now you're probably wondering, how do I add something to this? The cool thing is this is almost identical to the way it was in Appraise It Classic. So if I want to add something into this, we'll put in there Clayton for Clayton, North Carolina. If I want to add that in there, all I have to do is type it out, hit Manage Responses. I could give it a title. The title is usually reserved for if you have like multi-paragraph responses so that you can just give it a more concise title. For 1 or 2 word responses, you don't really have to do a title. And this is where I could also assign an F key. This will look very familiar to you because it's lifted straight from Appraise It Classic. I'm not going to assign an F key. I'm just going to hit save here. And there we go, close. And now it's added down here at the bottom. And if I want to use it, I can just type in CLA and there you go, Clayton. I could just tab out of there. So real easy to use the responses. If you want to get rid of one, if I wanted to get rid of, let's say Cleveland here, I could just click on delete response and say yes. And if I want to manage them once again, click on manage responses. Very simple. Remember I told you there is a hidden panel here, and that is the help panel. The reason we hide it is because you guys probably are not going to be using it. But for people that are starting out in appraising, trainees, people that are, you may be their mentor. They're going to new people working with you. Help can be very helpful. Imagine that. So if you click on help, what it'll do is it will give you, and this is also lifted straight from Appraise It Classic, it will give you text information about what you should fill into a field, what they're looking for, and it may give you some information about the abbreviations that are used in there. So a good one is quality of construction. It'll give you some information here, and then you can also click here to get online help as well. But we tabbed it out because most of you guys have been doing this we've been doing UAD for since 2009. So we're very familiar with the formatting and everything else. Finally, there is the format panel. Format panel, when you may have noticed when I wasn't in a field that required any type of formatting, which would be a blue field, what I get here is just a color key. And you can see that green means a formatted field. So if I'm down here in the grid and I go to a formatted field, this essentially turns into the UAD helper that you are familiar with from Appraise-It Classic. Same concept. Just like in Appraise-It Classic, if you don't want to use this format panel or /UAD helper, or however way you want to look at it, if you don't want to use it, you can type directly into the field, because a lot of us have already figured out and know by heart what this formatting is. So you can just type directly in the field. If you make a mistake and tab out, it'll turn red. But if you do want to use the format panel, it is over here. I think the main change is, I think it was like Alt Enter or Shift Enter or something, Control Enter, something like that, to jump from, without using the mouse, to jump from the editing area over to the panel. In that case, it was the UAD helper, and here it's called the format panel. One change we did make is that you have to press F12 to jump over. Now it's not like Alt or Control Enter or whatever it was. So just keep that in mind. Everything else up here, completely identical and works the same. Okay, let's check on you guys for questions. Let's see. None. Okay, good. Everybody, let me check my email. Make sure nobody's had any questions via email. If you are not signed into YouTube, you can just simply send an email to me, training@sfrep.com. I'll be happy to answer that for you. And by the way, if you think of a question later, training@sfrep.com, I'll be happy to answer. Now, if it's something you need immediate assistance with, I would go ahead and call our tech support. The tech support, they can be reached quite easily with the 800-644-4051. So you can just go ahead and contact them directly. Okay. Let's see. We've gone over that. One of the things I do want to show you. Sometimes I go over this in the tips and tricks webinar, but I love showing it off because it's one of my favorite things. If you need some extra space in the report, we do have a cool new feature called automatic shrinking text. Well, that's what I call it. And the way it works is very simple. I can fit one Salt Lake City in there. Let's try two. No, I cannot fit Salt Lake City in there a second time. Or can I? I can. Oh, I've turned it off. I'm sitting here going to show you something. There we go. It was turned off there. So now you'll see what happens here. You can see as I keep typing, the text will automatically shrink. And this can be, this is marginally helpful here in the city field. If you maybe you have a really long city that's just not going to fit. Where this really is very helpful are down in these multi-line fields. And sometimes you just need like 7 extra words, maybe 1 extra sentence to be able to fit in there. And in Appraise-It Classic, it would just trip over to extended comments. So you'd make the reader get to the end of a line and then have to go to the extended comment page to see the remaining sentence or so. That's annoying. So what this will do is this will shrink, because in a multi-line field, they have way more text to be able to shrink down. So in a multi-line field, it's not just 1 or 2 words you can fit in there. It's like a whole sentence you can fit in there, maybe even 2 small sentences. So that can prevent you from having to send the reader over to a separate addendum to continue reading. And everybody just loves that. Now, this is something I do go over in the tips and tricks, the part 2 to this, and that has to do with moving these panels around. For right now, I'm just going to show you that you can move them around. The reason I'm going to show you this is because you may inadvertently do this. I've seen people where they are trying to do something and they may have been up here and they clicked, but they accidentally pulled the panel out, and then they freak out and they're like, well, how do I put that back in? And then now it's floating there and it's in my way. I don't know what to do. Do not panic. If anything like this happens to you, just come over here to view, select reset to default, say yes, and it'll put everything back the way it was. Very simple. The one last thing I do want to show you guys is this down here at the bottom. all services currently says online, has a little green, friendly green light there. This is a real-time services monitor. If the flood maps go down, if the street maps go down, if our phone system goes down and you can't call tech support, then this will turn red. And if you click on it, it will tell you what's wrong. And if you click on that, it will open up a web page, which is this web page right here, status.sfrep.com. If you're using Appraise-It Classic, you can actually use status.sfrep.com now. If you think something has happened, you can come to this manually and see what's happening. Right now, everything's hunky-dory, but if anything was wrong, this would turn red and it would say what the problem is. We will also put on there some information as to what we think the resolution time will be. But if you have Appraise-It Classic, it is done real time down here. So you may just be chugging along down here and all of a sudden this may turn yellow, meaning degraded service, or it may turn red, meaning there is an outage. And this will always keep you apprised. Now, we'll still post to Facebook. We'll still post to Twitter. We'll still post onto the phone system to let you know when you call in. But this can prevent you from ever having to even pick up the phone or to go to Facebook to check and see what's going on. We just put it right down here in the bottom. Now, in the companion to this one, I do want to show you really quickly how you can go and look at what we have coming up as far as webinars. If you go to our website, which I'll pull over here. If you go to our website and you mouse over training, and then you come down here to training calendar and click on that, this will show you all of the webinars that we have scheduled coming up. The next webinar I have is going to be next Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. These are all Eastern times. I'm in North Carolina. And the next one we have scheduled is for 11 a.m. on Thursday. And that one is on buying a new computer. So if you are planning on purchasing some technology coming up, I've been using computers and been in the technology space since 85. So I've been doing this for a very long time. I can kind of give you some tips and tricks, and I'll even give you my contact information so that when you are out at Best Buy or Staples or wherever looking at a computer, I can give you some tips. I can kind of give you my opinion on what type to buy. If you have any questions on technology, how to use the iPad for collecting information, I'm a photographer. If you got some picture taking questions, I can help you out with those as well. Picture editing, all that kind of stuff. You don't have to sign up. Just like with this, we'll email you in the morning. Just click on the YouTube link when it's ready to do it. Hopefully I will have all the bugs ironed out by then and won't be getting bad echoes and anything. And then this one is importing photos from your camera. This was actually requested by our tech support. They've been having a lot of people who have, especially with Windows 11, having problems getting images off their camera. So on the 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern time, we will talk all about getting the images off of your camera. We'll even probably talk a little bit about some editing techniques to make your photos look a little bit better. We could also talk about some framing techniques. So if you can, how you actually frame up your photos, and we'll be talking about how you can get your photos off of an Android phone, an iPhone, or, an actual point and shoot or a DSLR, whatever you may be using. And then this one right here is an introduction to Appraiser Pro. So I don't actually have any of these tips and tricks webinars scheduled for this month. I'll probably be doing one next month. And I do apologize for those of you who wanted to do some training and weren't able to for the last month. But I went on vacation out of the country towards the end of August, and then September I was in Las Vegas for about half the month doing shows and stuff like that for SFREP. So doing Appraisal Summit and Valuation Expo, which, by the way, if you've never been to those shows, go next year. They are super cool. It's a lot of fun. And you get your CE as well. It's really cool. But now all that's done. So we're going to get back to a regular schedule. So look for the November schedule coming up real soon. Okay. That being said, I think that's everything. So if you have a question, there is a little icon over there is a chat window that is over to the right, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. You can also, if you come up with a question later on, you can, of course, email us My email is simply training@sfrep.com. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Once again, though, if you have a technical related question that's going to require some in-depth, logging into your computer, telling you how, fixing a problem, telling you how to do something, I would recommend that you call our tech support at 800-644-4051. They're there 7 days a week. They're usually there until 8 p.m. Eastern time, 5 p.m. Pacific, and they will be happy to help you out. They can log into your computer, get everything fixed for you, and you can also email them directly, tech@sfrep.com. And once again, they are there on the weekends, so you can do that as well. So, does anybody have any more questions? This is recorded. If you want a link to watch this slight disaster, yeah, it's just I'm being hard on myself. It's the stuff at the beginning. I've done that. I've made that mistake before, but it's been probably a year and a half since I've done one of these, so I completely forgot. But if you want a link to this recording, just send me an email, training@sfrep.com. I'll be happy to get that to you. But we do, on our YouTube page at youtube.com/sfrep, we do have some recordings of this webinar that you can also watch. Okay. And, we're not making drastic changes to Appraise-It Pro on a weekly basis. So it is definitely still completely up to date, even though I think that recording might be about 8 months old or so. So if you guys don't have any other questions, thank you for showing up. Once again, next Thursday, we will be doing a technology webinar all about buying a new computer, whether you should upload or upgrade to Windows 11, talking about your camera, any questions you might have there, what camera you should buy, what type of phone you should get. We'll be happy to help you out with all of that. Free webinar. Just look for the email next Thursday. We'll be doing that. I think it was at 11 a.m. Eastern time. If you guys don't have any other questions, thank you so much for showing up. I really appreciate it. I hope all of you. There is, by the way, a little bit of a delay, so that might account for why there was a little bit of staggered on your stuff coming in. Which sketch program is included? Tim asked that. Tim, we include Sketch-It. Sketch-It is what's included with the actual Appraise-It subscription plan. And Sketch is a very basic sketcher. You can find it under tools. Just go to Sketch-It. And it's just your average, the sketching programs are very similar. They're all very similar. It's real easy to do. We'll just do a box here, 50 by 30 down, 50 over, do a Control-C to complete it. There you go. Made to sketch with the keyboard. Real simplistic program. If you want something more feature rich, we do also sell Apex. And we are planning, dependent upon how the whole UAD 2.0 development goes, we are planning on updating our sketching program at some point. I have no ETA on when that will happen, but it is planned. So there's that. Robin asks, does a sketch program come with Pro? Yes, Sketch-It does. I'm not going to go over Sketch-It. It's identical to the Sketch-It that is in Appraise-It Classic. Works with Pro. All versions of Apex also work with Pro. All right, guys, if you don't have any other questions, thank you so much for showing up. I really do appreciate it. Tim also asks, Mls Import Included. Not included, but it is available. That would be an extra fee. You can contact our sales department. They can tell you what the fee would be. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. There are a couple of different programs that we offer that do MLS import. We have a cheap, less user-friendly version called CompLink that requires you to export a data file from MLS and then you load it in. It doesn't bring in the pictures, but it's a cheap solution. I personally really like Profit.ai, which is over here under services, Profit.ai right here. If you are on Appraiser Pro, everyone gets 5 free lookups just off the bat for Profit.ai. So I would suggest you go at least try it out. We do have a video at our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/SFREP. Or if you can just click on the little SFREP logo that'll be below the video, that'll take you to our YouTube channel. You can see how to actually use Profit.ai, or you can play around with it. You get 5 free lookups. I would highly recommend that you try it out. And then there's also Datamaster if you've ever used Datamaster. And then Spark, although I don't think Spark brings in photos, but I know Datamaster and Profit.ai both do. One of the things I like about Profit.ai is they have a backdoor into your, not only your MLS, but your local county records as well. And they will actually show you, they will actually show you your MLS and your county records data. And then it'll show you where there is any type of discrepancy. And then you can reconcile those discrepancies. That's one of the things I really like about Profit.ai. And it gives you like a map. You can just kind of visualize where all your comps are. It's a really cool program. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week and have a great weekend coming up. And we will see you next time. Thanks a lot.